I remember the first time I heard this quote, "A picture is worth 1,000 words." And to be honest with you, I'm not really sure who came up with that quote. I think there's ideas as to possibly whether an architect came up with it or a journalist came up with it. It really isn't understood who came up with that quote. But what I can tell you is that in architecture, we have used this phrase for many, many years. It is very difficult to communicate a design to a client for them to have a good understanding of the design and to be able to accept it. If we cannot depend on a sales technique through words and through gestures to be able to sell the idea, in architecture, it is critical that we have not only pictures, graphics, visuals that communicate the design, but also be able to show the visuals that are going to provide a level of eye candy to the client, where they can look at the design and truly make them emotional in accepting what that facility is going to look like. I think that this is a great quote. A picture is worth 1,000 words. And as architects, we need to embrace it, retain it, and execute it on a daily basis. Another quote that I like a lot, as an architect, I think it has followed me over many years. It was a quote by Louis Sullivan that states, "Form follows function." And a lot of people that are not architects, they may think that an architect just draws pretty pictures. But no, it is not that. Really what an architect is the combination between an engineer and an artist. That is what an architect is, when the two come together. And a lot of people don't know where that art comes from. Well, in simple terms, form follows function, meaning that when you determine what the function of that facility is, and you're able to design it properly and with a proper rhythm and materials and colors, then you're going to have forms that come out and they speak in an artistic way. That is what really this phrase, this quote says. And it was so beautifully put by Louis Sullivan. Form follows function. And if you want to be an architect, never forget that phrase. Form follows function. There was another quote that I like, and it was stated for one of our contemporary architects, Norman Foster, very successful architect of today. He stated, "As an architect, you design for the present with an awareness of the past." We cannot design today without those lessons from the past. That's basically what he's saying. We cannot forget our history in architecture. It is important to study the history in architecture and be able to learn from it so that we do not make the same mistakes in the future. If we disregard historic architecture, in my opinion, the future in architecture cannot exist. We might as well not be architects. So the way Norman Foster puts it, it is really, really critical to have an awareness of the past, to be able to embrace it and understand it and respect it in order to design good facilities in the future. Another quote that I like a lot, which I just love the effect of this, and it was a quote by Louis Kahn, another great architect. He stated, "A room is not a room without natural daylight." Natural daylighting is so important in the everyday activities of a human being. To be able to be in a room without natural daylight, without the sun, without the temperature, without the heat, without the natural light that it creates, is really missing out in life. How can we take out light from a building? It would just simply be unfair. So it's important to be able to include in a design as much natural daylighting as possible. Natural daylight is not only good for human beings, it's good for plants, it's good for pets. It also gives you the ability to appreciate your surroundings in natural daylight in a very different way than it would if you have artificial light. So that is the quote I like to close with, which I think that every architect should never forget. A room is not a room without natural daylight.